be in the world. I feel like I'm back in high school, chasing after the bus, like, wait for me. Because I am running late for homeroom. Good morning, wherever you might be. I am Hassan Thompson, the humble host of Homeroom, a service delivered by Educator's House. And we're back. So, just as a quick update, we are officially into week 3 of my 5-week challenge where I am bringing consistency to the space. So if you happen to catch this replay, please go back and watch the journey that I have embarked upon. You may find that I have published myself in the variety of spaces where the Educator's House exists as a personality brand. And now I am deep into it. And so, with that said, let's get right into this. This is today's cast puts us right in the middle of my multi-part series. We just finished our professional grade conference on Sunday, dealing with the deep history of diversity, equity, and inclusion, starting, as I come to find out, which started even before, what did he call it? Bloody Missouri? Started even before the Emancipation Proclamation. I might even say it started before the Civil War. Wait a minute. This was a big find for me. Well, bad, ugly, posted, necessary through the intersection. Kansas. Bloody Kansas? Is that what he called it? Some cat named Stephen or Stephen Douglas. Okay. So I've learned some things. I just want to say that about the deep history. And what I left the conference with was this idea of there's another term that I need to share with you guys: popular sovereignty. Apparently, according to our featured speaker, and if you haven't seen it, you have what is that? Less than 12 hours. I will be taking it down probably after this live cast. I will be taking down the professional grade conference. So if you're part of our small but strong community, and you missed Sunday's conference, it is still available live. The replay is available here on the channel, but you might want to let me invite the ladies up. Good morning, ladies. You might want to catch it while you can. But it was a great experience, and I'll say this, and then I'll introduce you, Joe. It was the concept of popular sovereignty versus what I'm going to call federal rights seemed to be the real spark that started the fire, the flame of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That might be an oversimplification, but what I left with was this issue of bloody Kansas and the fact that the slaveholding states, which were the Democrats, dun dun dun, were interested in keeping slavery as a formal federal policy. The challenge to that was, let me reframe that. The popular sovereignty said the people of the state should decide, will we be a slaveholding state or not a slaveholding state? And the federal government's policy was, we're going to alternate one slave, one free, or maybe it was something like below the Mason-Dixon line, slaveholding, above the Mason-Dixon line, free. Okay, no problem, Joe. Thanks for attempting. Though I feel the love. I feel the love. My friend Joe wants to come up onto the stage of the app, but she's not able to at this time. And that led to a literal battle, the precursor to the Civil War. And once the Civil War got started, I guess the slaveholding states were a little bit better equipped than the Union soldiers thought. And so the Union needed to recruit Black bodies as soldiers. And so Emancipation Proclamation was about the compromise, right? Well, we're going to grant you citizenship. Maybe I could call it freedom. I put that in big air quotes. If you fight for us. Well, the enslaved men fought, and the war was won. In exchange, they offered what is it? What's that R word for getting your money back? Reparations. And as a result of reparations, they were offered 40 acres and a mule from the land confiscated from the war. Well, then, as convenience would have it, President Lincoln got assassinated. How inconvenient. And his successor was from the other side of the aisle. The great compromise of winning an election was that he had a vice president who was of the slave holding mindset. So when he got assassinated, then this guy, Andrew Johnson, became president and started to dismantle some of the progress that President Lincoln made on behalf of Black bodies. What I was surprised at just how strategic it was. Right, my reading of history was, oh, Frederick Douglass is the homie, and he came up from slavery and had some sort of a moral influence on President Lincoln. Thus, Emancipation Proclamation was born, and perhaps it's just not that simple. It was a fantastic that's my little nutshell takeaway, but it was quite an experience. I'm back. I haven't done one of these in quite a long time, but how could I miss a Educators House conference on this 5 week span? So we have officially crossed over the middle ground, and we're moving into some new stuff. So I've got a few pieces of content, or a few pieces that we can discuss on today to sort of recap what we had, and also to push our narrative forward towards this coming Sunday, where Marshall, a man that I haven't met, hey, boring, is in the house, but he left. Okay, good. Glad. Thanks for swinging by. I'll close with this, Carla, and then I'll come to you. Um, Marshall, I believe is his name. He's going to help me mark um, where we left off, history of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's going to be quite a journey that we're on. If you're tired of listening to DEI, then just give me about 2 more weeks, and we're going to move on to our next major topic. Okay, but I'll leave that call to action for a moment. In the meantime, let me pass this microphone over to Carla, and allow you to give greetings and maybe your reflection on the day you came to the conference. What were your thoughts about that? And then we will take it from there. Carla, if you're available, the mic is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Hassan. I thought everything leading up to yesterday was planting the seeds for thought, which I believe helped to, it germinated into such a rich conversation. There was a lot of education that went forth. I did hear some of the educators wanting more focus on the education side, which I think you're going to get to, but I think it was important to understand the history and the journey. And I learned a lot myself as well. I'm looking forward to the discussions that come about, that talk about, now that we've done this dive, and we've kind of looked back at history. How has history repeated itself? How is history different? Is the cry of today any different than the cry then? And the things that have been done to try to serve the cry or stifle the cry, are they impactful in getting us to where we want to go? So I'm looking forward to how you lead this going forward. Alan.
No, I appreciate that. I felt the same thing about the educators wanting to bring issues of education in. Um, they gonna have to wait a while, because I am laying some groundwork. Now, I will offer this, which is factually true. The one area where I did neglect our historical journey. And it is something that I will bring in once I get closer to this, what I define as the intersection point between DEI and education, is this land grant and the initiatives that they made to make enslaved people more literate. So the opening of schools, the hiring of teachers, the training of teachers, there was a deep interconnection that I don't think we unpacked quite enough when it came to establishing both the colleges and universities, which one great created space for the agriculturalists and what is it? What is A&T? It's like agriculture and technology, right? So a lot of HBCUs have A&T in their name because that was part of the big initiative was formalizing agriculture and technology, which actually came up, right? Because he talked about the fact that a lot of the talent that was leaving the South was farming talent and engineering talent. So it's an interesting parallel there that we didn't tap into. Excuse me, and also teacher schools was also quite popular. And so then by training former enslaved women oftentimes, but also men as teachers, then they could go back and establish primary schools and secondary schools. So there was a big push, which we didn't dive into. And I think there is room to go back to that. So thank you. And I acknowledge that. Leticia is joining us over on YouTube, and she also acknowledged that there was a lot to learn. So, what I did appreciate about Educators House, and Joe, I'm going to lean right into an area of discomfort, which was, well, I'll speak to it in a minute, but Leticia has been a big supporter and she also learned a lot. What I appreciate about Educators House is that I wanted to not only be us engaging in professional development, but also having the experience of direct instruction. So, Marshall is a talented historian, from what I understand. He's excited to join this conversation and take us on our journey. And I also think, even though I don't want to go too far back into what we've already covered, he may have an interesting or unique starting point. So I'm curious because we did sort of leave off in the 60s. I'm curious how he wants to start the narrative when it comes to the more modern version of DEI. But to Joe, one thing that it did come up for me is this topic of how the Irish became white. I'm going to drop this book link. It was dropped at the conference yesterday. I'm going to pin it right up here to the top. I haven't had a chance to read it because I was just live with you guys about 12, 14 hours ago. But one of the things that was discussed was this concept of race in and of itself, which is really interesting. And since it's just the few of us here, perhaps there's room. And I'm not sure, Carla, if you're really available to speak or if you're busy getting ready, but I'll lean in and see where you stand. The concept of race was something that I was generally familiar with. And for the good of the group, if I could share my own concept of race, I really consider race to be a political definition rather than some sort of genetic or phenotypic definition. A phenotype is how something looks. So when we got into our conversation about abolitionists, the anti-slavery movement, there was okay, very good, thank you. Um, there was um, there's the side of the oppressor and there's the side of the oppressed, and maybe even in that statement, I'm already identifying my connection to critical theory, which is going to be under close scrutiny as we move forward. um, but the concept of race really didn't have to do with color. So a Irishman or a European who came to be an indentured servant, for my lens, could be considered politically black. In other words, they were on the side of the oppressed by serving as indentured servants. Um, then my reading of history says it was too easy for those indentured servants who usually had to sacrifice 6 to 10 years of indentured servitude, basically living in an enslaved state, in order to get their freedom. But if they escaped off the plantation, they could go to the next city and potentially cut their hair and blend right in. So maintaining this indentured servitude form of the peculiar institution was more challenging, and identifying a black or brown body became a much easier way to manage the enslaved, because anybody who had black or brown bodies could then be um, caught, just like 12 years a slave could be caught by a bounty hunter and brought back into slavery, even though they were technically no longer enslaved or free, a freedman. So they added some real nuance here in terms of how the Irish became white, because the Irish, among others, were also part of the underside, the underbelly of this peculiar institution. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I don't want to give too much of it away. My intention during my business hours today is to pull the replay off of YouTube. So catch it while you can. Put it on the website to encourage people to go to the website to subscribe, and then those subscribers will get access. It's going to take a bit of a technical gymnastics for me to figure all of that out, but that's going to be my goal for this week, is to move the professional grade formal conferences to the website so that folks can catch it there. So I'm growing and I'm going, but that's not going to stop me from going live. so so that's where I stand with that. All right, excuse me, guys. I have been catching this bus to be available for this. Okay, what I want to do, Carla, did anything come up for you, or can I move the mic forward?
No, you can move the mic forward.
All right,
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Okay, what I want to do is to pick up. Let's see. I did drop how the Irish became white. Let me see if there's any other links that are worthy of dropping, or should I keep the rest? I did a little bit of work with my chat GPT, so I may share some of that. Nazi brought up the issue of literacy, and one of the questions came up about the level of literacy, and it's, yeah, I need some water. You ain't never lying. Matter of fact, hold on, guys. I know I'm super live, but I do need some water, so I'll be right back.
I think while Hassan is getting some water, I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on what he talked about when he mentioned race. I never thought of race the way it was defined because of the way it's used today. But the concept of race being a socially constructed concept used to categorize people. And I did a little digging, and it talks about, it wasn't until like the 1600s to 1800s that there were scientists and thinkers, specifically someone named Carl Linnaeus and Johann Blumenbach, that created racial categories such as Caucasian, Mongoloid, and Negroid. And they were used to rationalize slavery and colonization, because once they had the people broken out into those categories, they could start to infer that one race was more superior to
Mm,
another.
mm,
So it goes back to what they were talking about yesterday, the manipulation of the mind, right? If the mind is fed the wrong thing, it affects your consciousness, which affects how you think and feel about things, which will ultimately determine your actions. So again, bringing it all together, it's almost eye-opening, and we're beginning to peel back the layers to the point that we get to, how do we do it together? We're not that different. From my perspective as a Christian, God created male and female spirit beings in a body, right? How the outer part looks might look a little different, but at the end of the day, bl- blood is blood, bone is bone, muscle is muscle, and spirit is spirit. And I'll land there.
I appreciate you filling in the gap for me there. I Love me some clear water. Hey, Dancer Sing, welcome to the space. This small community, we are going to be chopping up what happened in our live conference, Tarnished Reputation. Welcome. We're sad that we missed you on Sunday, but you're welcome to come up on stage. One of the areas that I think we also skipped over was what happened during the dark phase between um, Reconstruction, which included the work of the Freedmen's Bureau. Another interesting part was a white financed black something or other. I don't remember how he put it. And the movement that led, I think it was maybe Harry Truman, or at the end of World War II, the first real desegregation happened in the military, and we didn't really cover that. So maybe Marshall will get into that since it's more in the modern times. But there was a difficult thing that we didn't explore as well, which was what was going on with the Ku Klux Klan. And the Klan wasn't just after black bodies, they were after the Jewish bodies. They would deal with anybody who didn't fit their very narrow definition of worthy of citizenship. And so the black codes, the Jim Crow laws, and the well practiced domestic terror of the Klan was also a big part of that history, right? So for about 100 years, and I'll send an invitation to you as well, Priya, in case you want to join this conversation. Dancer saying you can come up as well. No pressure space though. So if you're in listen only mode, go ahead, get yourself ready for work or whatever you're doing. We got your back. Those codes were challenging. That was a challenging time, and to live in that experience was something that was difficult to endure, I'm sure. So for those 100 years, we saw the rise of lynching, and black folks weren't the only ones lynched. Who was a ally of the anti-slave movement was were potentially the first victims of the lynching movement. And the term picnic comes from that as well, where it became real social fanfare to go to the local picnic where a good old fashioned lynching would take place. These were challenging times, and so I do not envy what my ancestors went through. Moving towards what we see in the more modern times, we endured not only those codes from the 1860s, we're pushing now into the 1900s, 1920s, and now into, so we have World War One, we have World War Two, we have the Vietnam War. And once again, as we see the parallels, they needed black bodies. They needed black men to serve as soldiers during the war. And Kennedy, which I will put on a parallel track with uh, Abraham Lincoln, Robert Kennedy was willing to make a compromise. So the movement to desegregate the military was already happening, even though practically speaking, it really had far less to do with soldiers and far more to do with the bodies that the soldiers represented. You also have back then Frederick Douglass, who was a contemporary and some might even consider a colleague of Abraham Lincoln, then president. And on this side, you have Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was a contemporary of Robert F. Kennedy. So there's an interesting parallel of this main character man who is advising this presidential candidate. You also have a very interesting parallel with their vice presidential picks. So, President Lincoln had Andrew Johnson, no friend of the Union plan, uh, to what would I call it, to pay back the enslaved people. And here you have Lyndon B. Johnson, who was no fan of black people either. Both of those succeeded the assassinated presidents. Both were assassinated. Crazy parallels. And the two Johnsons then put in policy to dismantle what was going on, um, what their former president was doing. So that's very interesting. I also learned that there's a guy named Garnett who was the equivalent to the Malcolm X of Martin Luther King. Malcolm X. So very interesting parallels, which makes it very easy for us to like jump through the wormhole from 1865 to 1965 because those parallels are so very strong, right? You had the Freedmen's Bureau back then, and you have affirmative action in these more modern times. So many parallels, right? So that's sort of, I feel like we skipped over what was going on in the Black codes and that nearly 100 years of domestic terror upon Black minds and Black bodies. But at the same time, there was the rise of the HBCU. There was the rise of the Black professional class. So there's a lot there that we just didn't have the time to cover. What I would like to do though is offer, let's see, a lot of parallels. White finance, black leadership is what it was called. So yeah, thank you for that, Leticia. Um, let me see. Where do I stand now? So what here's where I want to go. And forgive me because I may end early because I'm not as prepared. I literally am just putting myself back together from the live event and it can be quite exhausting, but I am committed to this, ready or not, here I am. Here's what I want to get with Marshall about. I have made it clear on this live event. Yeah, I agree, Leticia. I'm sorry, Leticia in the chat said that a visual diagram, a Venn diagram, even, or some sort of parallel ladder strungs would be a very powerful visual to go with this. And I agree with her 100%. Um, Here's where I want to deal with Marshall. I am one curious to hear his thoughts about how affirmative action got started. What was going on with Kennedy? What was going on with the war? And there's some interesting aspects to the way that the military decided to integrate. They did. There is someone, not the Heritage Foundation. What's this guy's name? I don't have it organized, so I'm not gonna waste time trying to find it. But there is someone who I've studied who looked at the style of integration in the military, and it very closely mirrors what we see in the more popular versions of DEI during those days, which was make white people feel bad about themselves. You may see I'm wagging my finger on YouTube right now. Highlight where they've been wrong and then recondition them, right? So you got to break down the white psyche, which is built on this critical theory that white bodies represent a system of oppression. And so if you've got to break them out of that mindset, help them recognize that they are part of a system of oppression, and then recondition their mindset to be more deferential to the folks that are not like them, right? And so there's a lot of guilt and shame that goes with the retraining of white minds according to this style, which came out of the military and made itself into popular parlance of this era. So I'm curious to hear from him where the historical context sort of got started, um, and how we led to Kennedy, what was going on with that executive order, which formally introduced the language of affirmative action or actions that affirm. The language around without regard to race, creed, nationality, et cetera, um, and acknowledging once again we're sort of sidestepping education here, so I appreciate your patience, but really if you look at what was going on with King, a lot of it had to do with economic empowerment. This was, and it came up at the conference, a human rights issue rather than a race issue or even a civil rights issue. So I thought that that was really powerful because it really started in the workplace. And then later, they integrated important rules like the Special Education Students with Disabilities Act came a little bit later. Title IX and gender equity came a little bit later. And then what was going on with the Department of Education and the Office of Civil Rights came a little bit later, right? So Title One is about funding. So the federal government provided additional funds to low income communities. Uh, Office of Civil Title Nine, so if including equity, I should say, and then the ESSA in front of me, but what was going on with the federal protections regarding students with disabilities and ensuring that they had equal access to education. So these three were outcroppings, were the natural evolution of this Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, which really started this whole thing off. Now, that part is important because then it led us directly into the corporatizing, the corporate optics of what diversity, equity, and inclusion meant. So that's when you started to have corporations make public commitments to diversity. We saw the commercials. Oh boy, I forgot one. I'm sorry I'm not ready, guys, but I will try to deliver this to you next time. But Charlemagne the God, if there's a link somewhere, I've already dropped it. Has a bunch of interesting clips, and Leticia may remember because Words of Wisdom, I believe, came into the room and said DEI stood for didn't earn it. I thought it was super clever, but there was a real meme. There was several memes going around dealing with the criticisms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But back then, it was the word of the day from corporations that we want to diversify our workplace. And there were arguments, professional arguments made that said, if you diversify the workplace, it will improve your bottom line because you will be able to tap into, let's say, black folk who love to shop at Target. So if you have black folk, this is where we run into the issue of race versus qualification. If you have good black folk making decisions on your C-suite boards, higher level middle management, then they can make decisions or represent new communities, which represent new markets. So, from a business perspective, there was this interest in having marketable. I'll bring you up, Ty Dollar Sign. Welcome to the space. Pro Lyrical America. I'll bring all you guys up in case. No pressure, but if you want to come up and push the conversation, you're welcome to. There was an argument to be made that if you diversify decision makers, it'll actually be good for the bottom line. Well, they tried that and they found out that it wasn't necessarily the case. It wasn't a causation relationship. So you started to see a little bit of pushback there, but the optics still mattered, right? So the virtue signaling is another term that comes up during this era. So there were commercials being made, and you had to make sure that you had a black lady in the commercial. And these days, you got to make sure you have somebody in a wheelchair in your commercial, right? And so this was the corporate signal that perhaps there's money to be made under this DEI banner. So that was a big part of what was happening in the corporates. Now, because of that corporate investment, what we found is the the professionalizing of diversity, equity, and inclusion, in particular in the workplace. Now, follow me now. You had now a universities that would offer majors in diversity, equity, and inclusion. You had the creation of departments of study, trigger alert, that dealt with ethnic studies or gender studies as part of the training on modern diversity, equity, and inclusion. So now you have people coming out of the university with, a African American studies as a major, or the history of women from 1965 to 1985 as a thesis for a master's degree. And so you see that there is this movement at the university level to create professionals as experts in the DEI space. Those professionals would then get C-suite offices at the corporation. So now you've got C-suite level representatives who are looking at the diversity, equity, and inclusion inside the corporation's infrastructure. You're also going to see the rise of these DEI, dare I use the term operative, let's call it professional, at the university. So they come out of the university with a degree and they come right back into the university as, careful here, a non-academic administrator. College. They're not looking at rates of retention or the length to graduation. They are just looking at the optical numbers. What percent is represented by this race or that gender or this special group or that special group? And if we're not representing the race according to their qualitative calculations, then perhaps this school is engaged in racist or racist behavior. So you while on the one hand you see the rise of the corporate interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion, you also see the professionalizing of it and then the movement of an entire bureaucratic class of DEI officers. Woo! Now let's fast forward just a little bit, because once it gets into university, we see the rise of new language, rise of language like critical race theory. And it's a whole nother controversy. I did this conversation. Ty Dollar, I did send you an invite. Carla, I'm going to make you a moderator just in case perhaps my invite isn't working. Michael, I see you as well, Prolitical. Thank you guys for coming. So with the professional class of diversity, equity, and inclusion officers, now you start to see the change. So this is the area where I want Marshall and I to kind of march into how it became so professional, how it became a money making opportunity to represent diversity, equity, and inclusion. Where I want to land the plane with Marshall is this issue of what would I call it? I'm going to call it a loyalty statement, where even I, when I was in the job market, had to make a loyalty statement regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I was applying for a teaching position, and I was asked in front of the panel where I stood with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And honestly, I don't think I handled that question very well. And for the first time in my 20 years long career, I was not invited to take a position. Black man in America as a science teacher is a very coveted role to represent at your school, especially if you're looking at DEI optics. But I did not pass that. I didn't handle that question as I should have done the corporate gobbledygook and gave them the answer they expected, but I didn't, and it did not go well. So that's sort of the journey that I want to look at. I see Ty Dollar Sign came up onto the stage, and so I'm going to yield to you as a new voice. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome. Go ahead and
Hey, good
introduce
morning.
yourself and what's come up for you, sir. Welcome to the stage.
How y'all doing today? Love listening to the educators, man. It's just so great. So much information you gave there when it comes to this whole thing. It's it's disheartening. I'm actually glad that my teenagers only have 2 more years in getting out of the school system because Lord have mercy.
I know
It's
that's
gonna be
right.
scary for the babies.
Talking about the babies might give me a chance to give an announcement to those of you that are listening to my voice, whether through YouTube or here in the live room. I want to talk about the babies. So while you see me doing the long, slow walk through diversity, equity, and inclusion, I promise you this educators is not just about that. But I am doing this multi-part series and I'm doing this deep investigative dive into it. However, in uh, Mr. Thompson got love for the babies. The next topic that I want to slow walk is actually this topic of screen time as it intersects child development. So, to your point, there's a few things that come up for me, Ty Dollar, when I think about your comments. One, um, how do I want to get into this? Let me start with a call to action. So, for those of you that can hear my voice, if anything comes through your algorithm that deals with issues of screen time or issues of child development, please send them to my box so that I can have some good content for Homeroom as we unpack the new topic, which will take, I'm going to reserve somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to finish in one Sunday, or perhaps I'll need a part two. So I'm holding some flexibility there. But in about, so that puts us at 2 to 3 weeks from now, we're gonna clean up all of this and then move into this new topic of screen time. So if you see anything that talks about the addictive nature of the screens, especially screens with children, screens as the babysitter, the algorithm, I've come across issues of Roblox, right? So all of that, and then child development. How the other question I want to struggle with is how should our children be developed? So if you have any memes, any clips, YouTube, Instagram, I don't have TikTok, but you can send it to me anyway, then I can start to curate that conversation. The second thing that came up for me, Ty Dolla, is the question of COVID. I don't know how much credit I want to give it, but the fact that yours only have a few years left means that they were in the middle of school during that pandemic. And when I look at my own son, he was pre-kindergarten during the pandemic. So he, generally speaking, would have been home anyway, right? Perhaps I would have sent him to like a TK or some kind of preschool like environment, but he just stayed at home. And because I was a public school teacher, I was also teaching from home. So I was available to keep him. So how do I say, was too young to feel the impact of COVID. But when I think about students between my son and yours, oh my goodness, that is
Yeah, that was a mess.
a mess.
My boys were, I think, fifth grade going to the sixth or something like that.
Mm,
I think the sixth was the first full year of homeschool.
mm-hmm.
And I think it was detrimental socially. Like they need the classroom, but they
Yeah.
learn better in the classroom. So in that interaction when it comes to socialization and things, and yeah, it's difficult.
There's a strong
But
through
we
line.
hear 10th graders now, hopefully, going to the 11th grade. So my goodness, though, you could definitely see remnants of things that happened to those children at that time.
And I'm not sure that there's going to be recovery. I think that gap will always exist in their lived experience. You bring up something interesting, which is this, what I wrote down was social anxiety, right? But there's this very interesting, sounds like another multi-part series here, guys, intersection between what was going on with COVID and what school from home. Everybody's on the Zoom, everybody's on Google Classroom almost, and trying to figure out what that is. And now we see the rise of artificial intelligence, where there's an argument to be made that says, give the kids more of that. More screen time. AI as the personalized tutor, and the promise of AI to help with individualizing instruction, and every kid can get an individualized education plan, aka an IEP, and every kid can have a personalized tutor as long as they're on the screen, which
Oh
continues to
my
make that
God.
argument.
I heard Dr. Carr last week say there are teachers that say, no, I heard Dr. Black at Clark Atlanta say this. He's like, in my class, you don't use AI or Chat GPT. You write in his humanities class he gives you paper and pencil.
Hmm.
You're gonna have to write that paper in front of his face.
Mm.
Because there are students at Harvard who never read a book cover to cover because
Tell
they
them.
think they can get on ChatGPT and create paper.
I have been in spaces where I've gotten access to some research that talks about that very thing, this delusional level of mastery that our college students have because they spent 5 minutes getting ChatGPT to write a term paper for them that they turned in for a decent grade. Um, Spark Notes, Chat GPT. There's so many now. And then the kids, the college kids, certainly, and the younger kids will be following this lead. They're able to use two or three different AI systems to write the paper, refine the paper, and then actually introduce human error into the paper to make it appear more like it was written by them.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah. Yeah. This I came up on this not too long ago. Yeah, they'll use one to write the paper, another one to refine the paper to try to remove the AI lingo out of it, and then another to actually introduce just enough human error, grammar errors, maybe a spelling error here or there to give the appearance when the professor puts it through their AI checker. There'll be enough human error to then make it. It's wild. It's almost like when I was teaching in high school. What links will a kid go through to cheat when it's like, man, for all that, you could have just studied.
That's interesting. But I think if you're in a class like a journalism class where you have to do a lot of personal interactions, people can read what you write on the paper and be like, you don't even talk like that.
Right.
That's how I know that's not even you.
Well, what's interesting, and Ebony talks about how she used it. She used it as well. Shoot. But what is going to call upon us as professional educators is to rethink. There's two ways that this can go. On the one is move into more oral exams, right? What I used to do when I was in the classroom was I had my students do a writing sample at the beginning of the year, and then I could always compare what they wrote to that writing sample. So mine was a lot more low tech. But it's either having them demonstrate mastery through other means besides multiple choice questions or the written responses, which can be used by the tool. So then they would have to come up or they would have to do some kind of capstone or some kind of project, which then they could present orally. So that's going to be one powerful tool. Let's talk about it. And then I can determine your mastery through our conversation. The other part of it is going to be let me assume that you're using AI. So now I'm going to evaluate you at a whole different, in a whole different way, because my operating assumption is you've used AI to do this. So now I'm going to ask you some deeper questions. I'm going to go even further. My concern with the second version is that for those who don't have access, they're going to get left behind, right? It's like, having the kids do long division and everybody's got a calculator except for you. So that can be a problem if you're on the wrong side of that gap, of that technology gap. Um, so it'll be very interesting to see how we as teachers struggle with assessment and evaluation of student mastery in the world of artificial intelligence. Generally, and I see your question, I'll answer it in a second, Ebony. Generally, the professors, as you talked about, Ty Dollar, take one of three positions. Either one, not in my classroom. Here's a paper and a pen. Number two, hybrid use. You can use it, and I'm going to authorize to use it as a thought partner. And you're going to bring those thoughts in, and then we will get into some discussion. Or three, we're all in. I want you to use it to do your research, to write your paper, and then we'll analyze what we're going to credit AI for doing. Let's analyze what AI said, and that will be where the learning takes place. Ebony asked the question, should the AI source be cited? And I do think that's going to be an important part of the plagiarism question. But let me move it to Carla. I see your mic is open, and then I'll offer it over to Pro Lyrical to jump in on this as well. Carla, the mic is yours.
My mic wasn't open.
Oh, okay. I'm going to hit mute. Thank you. And pass it to Pro Lyrical. Welcome, Pro, to the stage, man. Glad to see you. Do you have any on this topic?
Yeah, a lot. I apologize in advance. You can't hear me well. Can you hear me okay or no?
Yeah, you have a little bit of colleagues in the background, but we can hear you louder than them.
Yeah. I'm on a train. Sorry, a little loud. Yeah, I would say, I mean, I train a lot of our faculty on AI and do quite a lot with it. Yeah, I am sitting next to some loud people, sorry. I'm in Germany, so gotta do as they do. And there's a lot of interesting wrinkles on it. I think in the future, certainly what we think the assessment criteria will undoubtedly change. I can imagine a world where young kids have to get a thorough uh, ramp up in terms of actual writing as something that maybe even starts earlier and more intense, and then later on it's kind of like a calculator. Like once you pass the threshold, like I dub D able to not use or use a calculator. Same thing with I dub D able to use ChatGPT. Like we know you can write. But I do think the requirements will change at a higher level. Just be expected that people are using ChatGPT in an intelligent way. I don't really see too many other options. I can't imagine a world in which it's not going to get even more easy to write entire papers with it. I mean, unless the criteria change for what faculty are looking for across the board in terms of demonstrating knowledge in some kind of uniform way. We're going to be in the wild west for a while. I don't see that coming, but I do think something like what I'm talking about will change at the early levels and just be a different expectation of what we think young people really need. I got a lot more to say in it, but I'm certainly interested to hear what other people say.
No, save it because we are going to get into that. I want to do, you guys got me walking down some major topics here. Educators' House is going to be busy thanks to you guys. COVID and the state of social anxiety and the gap that it led is going to be something worth exploring. And then also artificial intelligence as it intersects education. So I think it's worthy of its own topic and its own slow walk. So we will definitely get into that. Michael left us a chat, and this is where we're going to leave it today. Bagel, the open source unified multimodal model. Say that 10 times fast. So I left it in the chat for you guys to check out. You can check out this demo of the open source. It looks like it came. I mean, I'm going to assume that these are Chinese names, but it looks like it was released on May 20th, 6 days ago, 2025. And I'm curious to see. So check out Bagel at your own, at your own discretion, and see what's going on in the open source. ChatGPT and a lot of these other organizations have closed source, which means you don't really see what they're keeping, what they're holding, what they're tracking. But with open source, and I'm no technologist, but at least with open source, those who do know how to analyze it have access to the actual source code and can see whether or not there's some funny business going on. So it's a powerful thing. So thank you guys for coming. We are still in our long march, but now you guys know a few call to actions. Homeroom is back, and we are in week 3 of our 5-week experiment. So thank you guys for being with us. My push is consistency. So no matter what is going on, I will be here at the dedicated time. So thank you for your support. Second, I'm looking to grow. So if you could just find someone and make a remark about what's going on over here on the YouTube channel. I don't have the YouTube channel available, but it's YouTube/@Educators House. You can share that with folks so that they can also either watch or listen. It's the same exact experience, just with the video interface, because I am on a mission to grow. Next call to action, I will see you guys on Wednesday morning. Right back here where we will continue to push the conversation forward. On Thursday, Stefan, I don't think it's this week. I think it's next week. Stefan Youngblood is going to do the Black AI Think Tank week-long experience. So I will be sure to drop that link so you can support him in what he's doing. Friday, I'll be back. And then Sunday, I'll be with Marshall. So check me out Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the morning show. And then Sunday, once again, Educators House will do part 2 of our slow walk to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Shout out to RJ America. Thank you guys for coming through. Michael, thanks for dropping that link. And I think we've done it, guys. I appreciate you for your support, but we're going to shut this room down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Peace. Okay, that was rough. Oh, right. Oh, I'm still on with you guys. Let me go back. I be forgetting to close out the YouTube. Let me go back. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. We're gonna land